My name is Amanda.
And I'm Kristin.
And we are the Exorcisters. So sit back, relax, and let's get creepy. Welcome to episode 32. And in this episode, we are going to be discussing the 1922 silent film Nosferatu. And this isn't up everyone's alley, my own included, I would say. Not because I don't appreciate it, or not because I don't enjoy it, or not because I don't like it. It's just hard to sit down and watch an hour and a half silent film.
Yeah.
Today, honestly. But this is really the OG vampire movie.
And one of the OG horror movies. There's only
Caligari.
2 years before this that horror even existed in film. Of course, we have plays. That's where Dracula came from. And
exactly.
Stuff,
and Frankenstein by Mary Shelley and all of these horror novels and novellas. But this was the first time that you saw some like this.
Bram Stoker's Dracula was originally a novel that they then loosely turned into a play.
Okay.
That they then even looser turned into a movie.
Got it. So I have not read Bram Stoker's Dracula. I have it back behind us here. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I had to read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in high school, but not Dracula.
I remember loving that book, Frankenstein. I didn't ever read Dracula either.
Yeah. So this movie we put on this list because of how
iconic it is.
Iconic, and how it started so many things in the genre that we love so dearly.
Yeah. It's the first vampire film, one of the first silent films in horror.
Yes, exactly. So, I had seen this before we watched it for the podcast, and I liked it the first time I watched it and appreciated it, and I still appreciate it. It loses, for me, it loses a little bit of its rewatchability because it honestly is hard to listen to organ music for an hour and a half straight. Yeah. Like, there's not a lot of orchestra. It's straight organ music.
Which was interesting, and I told you this because I'm not a music person and you are. Right. So honestly, in any film, there are people who go, oh my god, do you remember that music? Unless it's iconic, like Halloween or Jaws, I really don't even think about the music. Like, I drowned that out and I paid attention to the film and didn't even remember that there was the organ music. So when you said that it was driving you insane, I'm like, I forgot it was even there.
Like, it was beautiful. It's just, like I said, a lot to listen to for an hour and a half. And because I had seen the movie before, and some of the scenes are slower because it is a silent film.
You couldn't get into it as much?
I couldn't get into it as much. And the music has to be basically portraying their emotions because they can't speak. It's overacted on purpose because that's the way they have to portray emotions through their face. But also the music is so in your face and loud because, first of all, if it was completely silent and there was no music, there wouldn't be much of an audience, in my opinion. It's like the Charlie Chaplin films, the, goofy piano and things that portray that comedic mood. This is very... organ music can be intense and be associated with the church or rituals, things like that. So it's very in your face if you're not trying to drown it out, and being a person that's very conscious of scores, it was just like a lot to watch again. And because I've seen it, I think I've seen it even like a couple times, just kind of more in the background. So we'll just do a quick walkthrough. This one is going to be pretty quick. I don't think that this is not true in the slightest, but I don't think that you can have an opinion that you hate this movie. Because, I'm sure you can, but not. And I like this movie. I love this movie. It's just, it's so different from anything we have today just because of the era difference. I mean, it's almost 100 years old. And so it's hard to say, oh, that movie is so boring because we're just so used to being immersed in sensory overload nowadays.
Right.
With CGI and crazy sound mixing and things like that. So it's kind of comparing apples and oranges.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's iconic. It's a classic. But I don't have a lot of opinions about it because it just is what it is. And I appreciate it and I love it for that.
Yeah.
So we'll take you through a quick walkthrough. It's going to sound pretty similar to Bela Lugosi's Dracula. I mean, it is Dracula.
The names are changed and stuff. But
yes, exactly. So just if you want to listen to this little walkthrough and some little fun little trivia things, then this is what we're doing. So in 1838, Thomas Hutter lives in a German city of Wisborg.
No idea.
Sorry. His mysterious employer is this estate agent, Herr Knock, like Herr Knock. And he sends Hutter to Transylvania to visit a new client named Count Orlok, who plans to buy a house there. And Hutter leaves his wife Ellen to his good friend Harding and Harding's sister Annie before embarking on his long journey. So what was interesting too, when we did the Women in Horror episode a couple months, I think February was International Women's Day, or early March, the first week of March. Okay. The woman that plays the wife has quite a role in this film. And she was just literally, even though she has a name in the movie, her name is Ellen, she was Hutter's wife in like the IMDb and everything. Like she was just the wife. Yeah. Which is telltale of the time. Just nowadays, just interesting to see somebody that had such a huge part in this silent film basically be a no name. Granted, I don't know how popular this movie was at the time. While he's on his way to Transylvania, Hutter stops at an inn to eat, and the locals freak out just because he says he's going up to meet this person. They don't like even really acknowledge his name or Count Orlok's name, and they basically tell him that you shouldn't go up there because they actually say there's a werewolf on the prowl.
Which is a fucking hyena.
Right. And also, since it is a silent film, there is text shot in. Like, they do have some dialogue, but it's written in as quotes that they flash, like, basically like a cue card up for. And there also is narrative storytelling with the script that's really hard to read. So, just, you have to pay attention to this movie. Yes. Have to. You can't mess on your phone, which is something I struggled with during this movie because I take notes on my phone sometimes. And so I'd get a text or, like, a social media notification, then I would...
And then you miss
pick it up, and then I miss like all this dialogue, so I have to like go back and watch it. The next morning, he takes a coach to the mountain pass, but just like in Dracula, in the 1930s Dracula, the dude's like, "I'm not taking you up there. You're gonna have to figure it out." And then another carriage appears for him and climbs for him to come up, and he's just like, "Okay, cool, let's go. This is fine." Whatever. And so he goes up to the castle, and of course he meets Count Orlok. And when he is eating dinner, because Orlok is welcoming him in and being very cordial, and when he's eating dinner, he accidentally cuts his thumb, and Orlok tries to suck the blood out. But of course, Hutter's like, "The fuck are you doing?" And Hutter wakes up the next day to the castle being completely deserted, and he has wounds on his neck. And then so he sends a letter back on horseback to be delivered to his wife. And it's so funny because even in like the synopses and like in the movie over and over, his devoted wife, over and over and over. It's like, God, she has no identity beyond that.
No.
None. Which, that's whatever.
This is supposed to be in the 1800s also. I know, yeah. So it's not even filmed in the true time.
Right. It's interesting to accept some of these cultural things that happened back then, but it's also like, I know she's got a hobby or something. That's not being your wife. And then when he is writing this letter, he basically attributes the wounds in his neck to mosquitoes.
Sure.
Perfect mosquito bites, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if would you be in denial or would you be like, vampire? Like, I know in this time he's probably would
would I be like vampire? Because of course I would. I'd be like, yes, I knew it.
Take me.
But someone who's probably afraid of them or doesn't like that, then yeah, they would probably be in denial.
Yeah.
And I would probably think bedbug, but...
Triggered.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. And we're not going to talk about it, but I had a bed bug issue one time. It was bad. Because my neighbors bringing in some shit off the streets, and I didn't realize that they could get into your apartment if you were clean, because I didn't know. And it was like, other than family deaths, the worst time of my life. Anyways, I digress, because I just can't. That night, Count Orlok signs the documents to purchase his home, and his home just happens to be across the street from Hutter's home.
Right.
And his boss, even in an earlier scene, is like, "Oh, sell him the house right across from you, sell him that house. He's like, really like,
yeah, his boss is real creepy in the beginning even.
Yeah. And you're like,
who the fuck are you?
Yeah. And this is super weird. He signs the documents, he gets the house across the street, and he notices a photo of Hutter's wife saying that she has a lovely neck. And that's one of those little dialogue things that comes up. And then I would be like, oh, these aren't fucking mosquito bites. Even if you were in denial at that point, like, I got bites on my neck and you're calling my wife's neck lovely. I'm going to leave.
Either way, you're a creeper.
These documents are just going to get lost, wet. Something is going to I know they didn't have shredders back then, but it's going to be gone.
They got fireplaces.
That's true. Burn it. And then Hutter, like, immediately starts reading a book about vampires that he took from the inn that he went to have dinner at. And he starts to think that Orlok is this Nosferatu that he's reading about.
Right.
The bird of death.
Right.
So, clearly, when he was like, oh, lovely neck, he's like, these aren't mosquito bites. He did come to that conclusion. Which is, especially for the time, interesting. It's not like it's surprising because folklore started far before we could hardly even communicate.
Yeah.
It's just, we think about, we're so far away from the 1800s and even like the early 1900s that it's like, oh shit, they like these vampires and things like that we read about go so far back into our history.
Yes.
It's when you get into the origins of vampires and why they started, which I don't know a ton about. You probably know quite a bit,
yes.
Or, which maybe we'll get to eventually. Maybe a
fun.
happy hour eventually. I don't know. But I think that that's so interesting. And I think, and I've said this before, I think horror movies should focus on folklore more.
Absolutely. I freaking agree. Like, I wish Curse of La Llorona was better because we need more folklore stuff.
And they took essentially vampires from folklore and look at the vampires, zombies, just creatures in general, werewolves, like that's all ancient folklore.
Yes.
So take more of that. I'm sure there's some part of the world that their folklore hasn't been picked up by the mainstream media that they could just make fucking bank on if they did it well. And even if they didn't. Like La Llorona, people are still going to go see it.
And sadly, they need to promote to the right studio because there's actually a movie that came out this year, and unfortunately I haven't watched it, but what it looks like is basically Irish folklore on fairies, and that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Let's keep going with that. I think it's called The Hole in the Earth.
Because fairies are scary. Like real fairy folklore is terrifying.
Not the fun cutesy
or the
things,
true blood
but the
fairies.
real fairies in folklore, they're terrifying.
Yeah. So that night, he's of course like any of us, if we're reading something scary or watching something scary, he's like real spooked, and he's convinced that this actual person he's actually met, that he's in like a close proximity to, is this legendary creature. So he's in his room and he has no way to bar the door shut. So he's just like in his room, being like terrified,
staring at the door.
Yeah,
which, that's what I would fucking do.
And then the door opens by itself. And a lot of I know I said that I got a little bored watching this movie the second time. Only the second or third time did I get bored, though, because the first time I watched this, you do get into it. It is a scary movie. Like it's not like jump scares and like the shit that we need that instant gratification for today. But the door opens by itself, and then Orlok comes in and is not all in his human getup. He is the vampire. He is Nosferatu.
Yeah. And Nosferatu isn't like Dracula in the sense that he knows exactly what he's doing the whole time, that he's being manipulative. It almost tries to tell you that Orlok in Nosferatu is two different people. Like during the daylight, he understands that this is wrong and he needs to be an upstanding citizen. And then when night comes, he becomes this other creature.
Like
basically.
He can't help it.
Yes. And it's so, and his eyes and his attire and his, makeup and and the eyes, how big they are, and when they move and then his head moves, like he's just,
it is so haunting.
It's so good. It's so well acted.
Yeah.
He's doing amazing.
And it's cutting actually to Hutter's wife. And she awakens from her sleep in a trance and walks towards the balcony and onto the railing. And the friend that's, I don't know why wives need a babysitter, but I digress, because if I just keep harping on that, it's going to get real annoying. But her babysitter, Harding, shouts her name and she faints while he's yelling for a doctor. So something weird's happening here. He's like, oh, sexy neck. And then all of a sudden she's in a trance and, shit's happening. And after the doctor comes, she shouts for her husband, but she's still in like this daze, and she's able to see Orlok in his castle threatening her unconscious husband, basically. And the doctor believes this trance-like state is due to blood congestion. Do we know what that is? Like, I know the two words separately, but it sounds like blood congestion is like high blood pressure.
I was taking that as meaning consumption.
Maybe.
But
like
I don't
ingestion?
know. Yeah.
Okay. Something with the blood is what we know. This must have been language that was used previously. The next day, Hutter explores this castle more. Last thing I would do personally.
Yeah.
And there's a crypt, because of course it's an old spooky castle. And he finds the coffin where Orlok is sleeping, resting, if you will. Hutter is obviously horrified, and he goes back to his room, which is what you get for slinking around a castle.
Right.
In a crypt. If you're scared there's a vampire, don't go to the fucking crypt.
Mm-hmm. Just leave.
Yeah.
Just leave.
During the day.
Exactly.
Bail.
But there's werewolves out there, meaning hyenas.
Which are still scary. They're just not human hybrid scary. So later, from his window, he sees Orlok piling up coffins on a coach, so a carriage, and climbing into the last one, like the last coffin before the carriage leaves. And then he escapes through the castle window, but is knocked unconscious by his fall and awakens in a hospital. If you see him leave, because maybe he's locked in there, but it doesn't ever actually, that I remember, show you them like locking him up. You saw him leave, walk out the front door.
Fucking bail.
Walk out the fucking front door. But at least, and who found him unconscious? Like, how? How did they just came upon? Because everyone stays away from that castle. Everyone stays away from that castle.
That's a good point.
So, I mean, like, why was somebody like, I'm going to stroll on by, see what the vampire's up
check
to.
this stuff out.
Yeah. When he recovers, he goes home. And then you actually cut to the coffins being shipped down a river on like one of those old wooden rafts with like the little pulley system to steer it, you know? They are transferred to a schooner, but not before one is opened by the crew and there's just a shit ton of rats in it.
Ew.
And
fucking ew.
Yes. And the sailors, especially in like rats cause the fucking plague. So
yeah,
they all start getting sick. And all the sailors that are there. And then the captain and one of the other sailors, I think the first mate, die. And the first mate decides to go destroy the coffins because he's like starting to get suspicious. It's just so interesting to me how all these people know about vampires. Like, that's so ingrained in their culture that...
Well, it was back then.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if something spooky's going on, vampires. But my second thought there is, when you're loading the coffins onto this, you're not like... Was it just so common to just move coffins around via boat? You know what I mean? Because he doesn't get suspicious until people start dying. But if there were like piles of coffins going on a boat, because like I get people die and you transport their bodies, I guess. But it seems like in those times you would just kind of bury them where they fell.
Yeah. They're there. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Or he awakens Count Orlok. And then the sailor just gets so scared because he opens his eyes. He just jumps into the water. He's like,
fucking fail.
I don't know. That's some fucked up shit.
Well, it's supposed to be a dead body.
There's a vampire in there. Just opens its eyes. I would rather fucking drown than pursue this or find anything else about this body that I just saw wake up.
Same.
So he jumps into the water. The ocean. He's not like in a... He's
yeah,
in
it's
the
not like he can get anywhere.
He will die in the ocean. And then, of course, the captain... And he doesn't warn anybody. Because there's still the captain. Into the ocean. Good luck, everybody else.
Bye.
Yeah. And the captain becomes Orlok's latest victim when he ties himself to the wheel. Which is also interesting. Because you'd think that there'd be other ways as a vampire that... Whatever. Well, I guess... To get into the port, he probably needed the captain to be like, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I answered my own question there. When the ship arrives in the town where he bought the house, right across from his boy and the boy's wife with the pretty neck, Orlok leaves carrying one of his coffins, and nobody sees him, and moves into the house he purchased NBD, no big deal.
Yeah, and he's just like carrying it the most awkward way. Like whether it's heavy to him or not, it's so cumbersome. I don't know how he's doing it.
Yeah. Coffin's a weird shape, man.
Yeah.
You're just carrying that around. Nobody notices. Nobody. The next morning, the ship is inspected and the captain is found dead, of course. After examining the logbook, the doctors think they're dealing with the plague because they think that they got sick from the rats, which is fair and also terrifying.
Yes.
The town is, of course, panicking, and people don't want to go outside because the fucking plague. I mean, we talked about when we did our Haunting by the Hundreds episode, that was, most of my stuff was about the plague.
Exactly.
Like the mountains of bodies that they couldn't even bury, and they just burned and put in pits. So, of course, they think that they should be worried about the plague and not this supernatural creature, which is a good cover. There are a lot of deaths in town which are blamed on the plague. So, convenient cover. I guess if you have to be a vampire, the plague is a good time to be around.
Yeah, right?
Which is awful. And then it comes back to the boss. His last name is Knock, and he is fucking crazy. Like, he was crazy in the beginning, and now he's, like, institutionalized. Like, in a word, crazy. And then he fucking escapes after murdering the warden. And then the townspeople go after him, but he gets away. And he goes up on a roof, and he uses a scarecrow to hide. And then you see Orlok staring from his window at Ellen. So there's like all this commotion. The town is out. Conveniently sets up this, scenario where he can go and...
Well, yeah, they're busy with something else.
Exactly.
He can go after what he wants.
This woman's babysitter's gone. And it's an opportune time to go in there. The husband's gone, and the babysitter's gone. So I'm going to go get that neck.
Ew.
And even though he told her not to, she read the book about vampires. Ellen did, his wife, read the book about vampires.
Fucking women.
Listen to your husbands. Don't read the spooky stuff.
Don't read it all.
Listen to your babysitters. That's just for fun. We know this was a different time. Don't come for us.
Don't come for us.
The book claims that the way to defeat a vampire is for a woman who is pure of heart to distract the vampire with her beauty all through the night. So you can only beat a vampire if you're beautiful. Did you know that?
All through the night? That sounds exhausting.
And hurtful. Like painfully, physically.
Like that's a lot of all through the night. If you know what we mean.
And she's like, I'm pure of heart, but I'm weak of heart. Because she opens her fucking window to invite him in, and she just passes out. She's like, yes, please. Oh my God, it's too scary. Like, out. And...
Well, because she really thought of, it's going to be all night. This is going to take forever.
She's like, I'm going to do this for the good of everybody. And then she opens the door and she looks at him. She's like, oh God, I can't. I got to swoon or something. I got to pass out. And she does. Poor little Ellen. And when Hutter, her husband, comes home and revives her, she sends him to fetch Professor Bulwer, who is a doctor. So all doctors are professors, and all professors are doctors, is what I'm gathering from all of these old movies. Which is awesome, because that's like double the pay. After Hutter leaves, Count Orlok comes in, of course. He starts drinking her blood that he forgets about the fucking sun. That must have been some good blood. I would say...
It was all night, man.
I would have said, like, good something else, but that was some good ass blood, man. Because he fucking forgot.
Damn straight, she's pure of...
Heart. And...
Her husband's been away for how long? Come on, man.
Pure. She did read that book she wasn't supposed to, though. How pure of heart is that?
That's a naughty book right there.
That's a naughty. Not naughty enough. I'm sure there's a porn about it.
Oh, for sure.
There's the Exorcist, and if y'all need to look that shit up, right? I saw the trailer for it on YouTube and like little clips because these guys were talking about it, but obviously YouTube, like I obviously didn't watch the whole. It looked classic, and if The Exorcist didn't inherently just shake me to my soul, I'd probably go watch it. But she's probably gonna vomit something while she's getting dicked, so I'm not gonna do it. But part of the trailer did... Oh, we are way off on one. Part of the trailer did have, okay, I have to defeat this demon by having sex. And he opens his briefcase and it's just different sizes of dildos that are going to exercise her. That are going to getting that E rating today. So, side note, if you find a Nosferatu porn, let me know.
Well, I mean, that's what vampires are essentially about anyway. That's what it all comes down to is, I mean, drinking your blood and entering someone's body to drink their blood. It's all about sex. That's all it's about.
My AP composition teacher in high school would love that because he thought that everything was homoerotic. Like, everything had a homoerotic
Freud
undertone.
was his favorite person?
Yeah, or was just all about, like, how men and women can't be friends, and everything's all about sex if you look into it.
Hey, I have had long thoughts about how everything really essentially is about sex. That's literally our only drive, is to procreate, and then we create culture around that. So, technically, it is all about sex.
This is the end of the Exorcisters podcast because it doesn't matter anymore about any of these horror movies.
Exactly.
We're just not going to review anymore. Be like, it's about sex. That's it.
That's what the movie's about.
And the blood was so good, coming back to the blood now, that he fucking forgot daylight was coming. And also,
good ass blood.
How did he have that much blood? Because, I mean, okay, let's just say this did go on all night and he sucked...
All night long.
You're going to get us copyright claimed. He sucked her blood all night. I'm not mature enough to say the word suck anymore. Oh my god. People are going to stop listening right now. I'm never going to listen again.
Okay, I'll be an adult. I'm ready.
Okay. How did she have enough blood to just do that all night, though? Like, we run out of blood eventually. You look like a turtle because you're trying not to laugh.
I mean, that's a good point. Yeah. If it really is. I'm trying to be an adult. Okay?
Proceed.
If it really is blood, then yeah, all night, yeah, she would probably be dead.
Yeah. Well, Knock... Forgot about him. He's the whole distraction here. Has been recaptured. And he senses what is happening to Orlok, who is evidently his master. So if you've seen Dracula from the 30s, or most Draculas, he has
Renfield.
this like... it's Renfield, yeah. He has this like human servant kind of person.
Who eats bugs.
Yeah, and rats. And they won't let him... He's trying to break out of his cell to warn him that people are coming. But then a rooster crows and Count Orlok vanishes in a puff of smoke as he tries to flee, and Knock senses as he quietly dies. So he just goes, poof, and he's gone. Ellen lives just long enough to be embraced by her grief-stricken husband. And the last scene shows Count Orlok's ruined castle in the mountains, symbolizing the end of his reign of terror. So, at least you got a good sucking in right at the end there. And the end. Thank you for listening. No, but at least she lived for her husband to embrace her one last time, and he dies.
I don't know. She was embraced all night long.
He goes, poof. He's gone. So I do love this movie. It is one of those that I am glad I've watched a couple times. I would watch it if somebody was like, let's watch Nosferatu. I'd be like, I'm down. But out of the collection of movies I have, if I'm going to watch an old one, I'll probably pull more. I would watch The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari again.
That was so
really good. We'll get to that.
Phantom Carriage was so
Phantom
good.
Carriage, yes, yeah. Dracula, Frankenstein, those will probably be my go-to before Nosferatu, just because it's just a lot of really in-your-face organ music, and that gets a little difficult to listen to. Yeah. In my opinion, it's a little grating.
Plus, you've seen Nosferatu more times than you've seen Caligari, Phantom Carriage.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I'm sure I would stop grabbing for them after I watched them a couple times too. 3 or 4 times each. So this movie's been out for a long time. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure you have some stuff.
I do. I have some pretty interesting stuff. So I'm going to start from the end just because we just finished with it. But the whole sunlight killing him thing.
Yes.
Or killing vampires at all. This is where that came from. And this was actually for them. They did this death to avoid a copyright claim on Dracula because they couldn't get the rights to it. And they still wanted to make this movie.
Yeah.
It didn't help. It didn't help at all.
They got sued?
Yes.
Did they lose?
Oh, yes. But yeah, they did the sunlight death so that it wouldn't be
It would be a different movie.
But it was Dracula.
Well, yeah, because in Dracula, he meets this man, buys real estate from him, gets enamored with his wife. Like in the movies, I'm not talking about the book, but like let's just look at the 1930s one, which came after. Mm-hmm. You know, that's more closely based on the novel because they did get the rights, I think. Yes. Yeah. So
the play got the rights,
right?
And the movie is based on the play, so it's a little different.
It went through some loopholes there, yeah. But it's basically the same concept. He wants this man's wife, and he goes through great lengths to get to this man's wife using this like human
and it's still like you said the realtor stuff. It's the exact same,
exactly.
So this was filmed in Slovakia, and it was. I think it's pretty. Like the footage is actually very beautiful. Especially because it's so haunting. Like the shots of him and even Knock, the crazy servant dude, is pretty intense in my opinion. But then if you even match it up just film quality to things like Freaks, it's just so much better taken care of. And the reason that happened was actually to basically... You know, we have cult followings of movies, and that's how things like Heathers are loved by certain people because it's very a cult type movie.
Yeah, people loved it. Yes, deeply.
That's how Nosferatu got saved. It was actually every single copy was destroyed but one, and then it was
when they lost their lawsuits.
Yes,
okay,
and then it was redistributed by little cult followings that loved this movie, and it was taken care of, and that's how we have this beautiful footage. The German studio that did this movie was actually intending to be a whole studio of supernatural movies, which would have been really cool.
Yeah.
Like Universal Monsters.
In Germany.
But in Germany. Yeah. And they weren't able to do that because they had to end up selling the company and filing for bankruptcy because Bram Stoker's widow copyrighted them.
Mrs. Bram, come on.
Yep. She got them for copyright infringement, and the judge ordered them to destroy all copies, and one survived, and that's how we have it now.
That's incredible and incredible. You know, one person was like, I'm keeping this one.
You know, it was probably one of the actors and one of the crew members who was like, this was amazing. It was so much fun. I'm not going to do it. Yeah. Like, I would keep that on my shelf if it just my friends did something cool. Yeah. And then they kept it and they managed to make it.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Definitely.
This movie was actually banned in Sweden until 1972 for excessive horror.
Ooh.
I know.
Did you find anything about the audience perception or reception? Well, I guess did it get widely? I'm assuming it never got widely distributed.
Exactly.
Because they caught it before it did.
Exactly.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's not that.
That's why it's a cult thing. It's an underground thing that started, and now we all know about it. But of course, nobody knew about it back then.
That's so cool that something survived the test of time like that and grew to be what it did.
Yeah, almost 100-year-old movie made it.
That's awesome. Cool. Yeah. I'd give this movie a 4 out of 5.
Absolutely. I would love to say, because I love the older movies, that I would give it a 5 out of 5, but I think I'm giving too many 5s. So.
This one gets ripped a 5 because Kristin feels too nice.
Yes, basically. Well, I also don't have the nostalgia with it. I didn't grow up with it. I watched it when I was older, so I had a little bit of that. A little old, but I like old movies, so probably 4. Yeah, it was a great movie. Mm-hmm. Thank you guys for joining us on this immature little walkthrough of Nosferatu. Sorry. I'm not. But thanks for bearing with us. And if you'd like to hang out with us on our social medias, you can find us at The Exorcisters Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us on Twitter at The Exorcisters, and we always welcome your feedback, your suggestions, your stories. You can email us at theexorcisters@gmail.com. We are very responsive to our emails and our DMs. We are also added to, this happened a couple months ago, but we also are added to Stitcher, Google Play, and TuneIn. We have started more blog posts on our website, which is exorcisters.com, so we would love for you to check us out there. And next time, what happens when you fall asleep? Till then, stay creepy.